Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, November 11th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is tomorrow, the game against Michigan in 15 days. It is Friday, so that means it's time for one of Buckeye Huddle's X's and O's gurus, Ross Fulton, to join the show. Ross, this is going to be a little more of a high-level look at things than we typically do, based on the fact that I don't think anyone really wants to talk about that Northwestern game that much anymore, but just sort of broadly speaking, how much of the struggles from last week do you put on the conditions on the field and all that wind and the rain and all that stuff? And how much of that stuff is actually a concern moving forward?
I mean, I put most of it on it because I think, as I mentioned in my article, Bill Conley from ESPN, he does like a little game breakdown each game every week of statistically. And if you didn't know anything about the conditions that Ohio State played in on Saturday, you'd say, well, they ran the ball fine, but man, was their passing offense horrific. Like, what happened there? Is this a huge concern? And so Ohio State's best attribute is their passing offense, and they were basically unable to do it. I mean, they were non-functional. So, in that context, it's going to be harder to run the football, right? So, I mean, everything is, I know that some people like to be like, oh, it's just toughness and lineup and, slobber knock, but there are numbers involved. Football is 11 on 11. The counterpart, the offensive ball carrier, you cannot block that defender by definition. So the defense is always going to outnumber the offense. So you bring more bodies in the box, the defense can bring more bodies in the box. They can always outnumber you, which is, that's where the QB run game came into play. So I think there's scheme issues, there's execution issues, but even with those conditions, if it's just some of those drop passes are caught, it's probably a very different game. So if I don't think anyone out there really thinks if they played Northwestern and even a moderately below average Chicago day for that time of year, that Ohio State wouldn't be able to throw the football. So I think the takeaways are somewhat skewed going forward, but I do think it has some import for the run game.
Well, you mentioned those drop passes, and they were you saw lots of different guys dropping passes, and some of it was just the wind blowing the ball. It seemed like just, it's supposed to be in front of me, and oops, it's behind me because the wind blew it sideways. So some of those are understandable. Some of them were just look more like just drops. One guy who didn't really, who really hasn't dropped balls all year is Marvin Harrison. And, we have talked on the post-game show, it feels like a couple weeks in a row, about the why don't they just build the whole plan out of Marvin Harrison offense. And, even getting him the ball last week, I think I targeted him 8 times and he caught 5 for 55 yards or something like that. So even in crazy conditions, good things are happening when you're getting him the ball. And, I know football is more complicated than just why don't they throw it to him every play, but also is there an argument that more of the offense should be going through him? Because it sure feels like no one's been able to cover him. So should he have 12 to 15 targets every weekend until someone finds a way to take him away?
Yeah, so I obviously can't swear to this or I have no inside knowledge, but I did get my sense rewatching the film was that Ohio State may have purposely not been targeting him in the hopes of establishing on film that you don't want defenses overplaying him, right? So I talked about in my article, we already saw Northwestern did something similar to Iowa, where if you put Harrison and Emeka Egbuka to the same side, and Julian Fleming and Cade Stowe are opposite, teams are rolling their coverage. And so they're playing, what I'd call brackets. So they'll basically play man on Harrison and Egbuka, but you have a safety over the top to help. And then they're basically playing Julian Fleming in what amounts to cover zero. They'll man him up and there's no safety help. So we saw that against Iowa, and obviously it worked out well for Ohio State on that 79-yard touchdown catch. So, Ohio State has been able to use that to their advantage, but I think that they would obviously like to minimize teams' focus on Harrison. This is my, periodic, it would really be nice if Jackson Smith-Njigba was available, at some point, because I guess if you want to do that to him and Harrison, then, I'd rather take my chances with Egbuka, frankly, than Fleming. I mean, Fleming has got open, but, I think he's somewhat of a short guy. You're either going to hit him on a quick comeback route or on a deep shot, basically, this year. And so I agree that I do think that there were probably ways that they could have gotten Harrison and, frankly, the receivers throw the ball more like on some quick comeback routes because that was basically like the only thing that was completable on Saturday. But at some level they do need production from the other guys, or else teams can't double Harrison.
All right, so that's the pass game. Let's talk a little bit about the run game. And there has been a lot of concern about that run game the last few weeks, and it feels like the explanation each week is kind of different. It's a great opposing defense in Iowa, or it's slippery turf at Penn State, or it's just, running backs picking the wrong holes or bouncing the balls when they shouldn't be bouncing the balls, or it's offensive line issues, or it's scheme and they're running the wrong plays, or, it's their zone blocking instead of man blocking, or it's the defense knows they can't throw the ball because of the wind, and so they can sell it to stop the run, whatever it is. They seem to be, running the ball fine before the off week, and now they've really struggled to do it consistently. The yards per carry numbers look good against Northwestern, but, that was skewed by a couple long ones, and, they really struggled at times in short yardage. So, did something change with the offense during the off week? Are they just playing better defenses? Have teams adjusted to what they're doing? What are you seeing as the issues right now in the run game?
You just covered them all for me, so we're good to go. So
yes, say them with smarter football words. That's what you're here for.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, and in fact there is a kernel of truth to all of them, and I do agree. Like in each game, like Iowa overloaded the box. Penn State, it was because of stunting. I would say Northwestern was because of both overloading and stunting. So there's a few things going on. So I will say that following the bye week, the diversity of the run game has shrunk. So like we talked about earlier in this year, like they have been doing more off of their, I would consider their base run play stretch and, from there, like duo and inside zone. And so they were doing, we talked about like wind back. We talked about like, they're running different types of counter tray, nothing like wild, but it was at least some sorts of change ups, same side toss. And that stuff has generally shrunk. I don't know if that was like, hey, we hope to put this on film earlier in the season and it'll like get teams to not play our base off, run tendencies. It was, if that was the goal, it's, not enough to do that. So teams have definitely taken the tack of trying to like, we got to take something away. Let's at least overload the box and see if we can put some pressure on Stroud, because if we just let him sit there, he's going to pick us apart. So you're getting more sacked boxes. You are having, I think, a combination of guards that I think are struggling. I mean, I think Donovan Jackson, to be frank, has had his issues all season. Like you can go back to the Notre Dame game and like see him kind of get beat up. But some of that stuff's coming to the fore because the things that they're asking him and Matt Jones to do are really difficult at some level, like cutting off on stretch the boundary, a defensive tackle who starts to the side you want the run to go to and is then slanting that way is like nearly impossible unless you're cutting him. And they're just leaving those guys in solo blocks trying to do that. And so they're having their struggles on that. And then, they've have a bunch of running back issues, injuries. I mean, you basically had one, Travion Henderson or Maya Williams, one or the other each game. They're both not 100%. I wouldn't say that either is like, has the best vision, you've ever seen. Particularly like when running like zone plays like that, they both have this bad tendency we talked about to bounce or to knock, so you saw that, all that in short yardage really on Saturday, like early, like, Williams just kept trying to bounce on 3rd and 1. It's like, just, you got to stick your nose in there and like see if you can get a yard. So all those issues are mostly coming to the fore in short yardage is where you're seeing a lot of it. I keep banging the drum that, Saturday accepted because of the weather. Like you are allowed to throw the football in those situations. Like you don't need to listen to like the conventional wisdom that you need to prove you're tough. And like, how are you going to get that 3rd and 1 against Michigan? Like maybe the answer to that is throw a quick slant to Marvin Harrison and against single coverage if the team wants to, slant and try to take away, the stretch. But I will say, like, just in the run game, there are things they can definitely do. And we saw some of that on Saturday. Like, it would be great if they go back to running counter tray in like the opposite way and wash down those slanting defensive linemen. But like, even short of that, like, I think they've been better the last few weeks running inside zone. getting more vertical. They can push down those slants. It kind of fits their running backs better, who can kind of make one cut and get upfield. That applies to both of them for different reasons. But like we saw, the 41-yard touchdown against Penn State was off of that. The 27 Williams' 27-yard run off against Northwestern was off of that. And then, there's the involving the quarterback in the run game, like sporadically doing that can take someone out of the box and can make it a little easier on the offensive line in terms of who they have to pick up. And so, it's not something you want to do every time, both for Stroud's health and because like you don't want defenses to dictate to you that Stroud has to keep every time, but it can be something that you can do enough to, minimize backside pursuit.
All right, and this next question is going to seem way too early, but let's be honest, it kind of started being Michigan week right around the time the clock hit 0 in Happy Valley a couple weeks ago. So it's kind of Michigan month in Columbus, and Ryan Day is like fielding Michigan questions and actually kind of answering them during the Indiana week press conference. So what the heck, we're going to talk a little Michigan here. How much does Ohio State need to run the ball to beat Michigan? And, you can give me a total yardage number or a yards per carry number, however you want to delineate that. How much do they need to run the ball to beat Michigan? And do you think they'll be able to do that based on what you're seeing right now?
So I would say their success rate in running it needs to be north of 40%. And so again, I'm jumping to like a Bill Conley term, but it's like, on first down, if you get 4 yards, it's a successful run. On second down, if you get half the distance you need, that's a successful run. And on third down, you convert the first down, that's a successful run. So, the biggest issue they've had has been like 0 and negative run plays. So you want to limit those because you don't, even with a really good passing offense, you don't want to put yourself in that position. So I think it's really a question of not having those negative plays. And I do think they can do it as long as they, again, make life easier on themselves a little bit by being less predictable in terms of the type of runs they're using, the formations they're running them out of, using some more throw game and short yardage. And, again, sporadically involving Stroud in the run game so that you can run inside zone, which seems to be your best run play.
Well, if you want to read much more from Ross, he wrote about the offense this week. We have a whole team of X's and O's guys, though. So it is Ross and 3 others. I don't know, the Ross and the Rossettes. I don't know. We gotta come up with a band name for you guys. But yeah, it is a fantastic team of X's and O's and analysis at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So you can read Ross's article there on our Huddle board. We have a whole thread dedicated just to X's and O's talk with our whole team of schematic gurus. So if you are interested in the kind of stuff we're talking about here, you would love being a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Get access for a full month. Just try it for 30 days. We're not asking you to, we're not asking to get married. We're just saying, hey, how about a first date? 30 days, give it a try, see how you like it. That 30 days is going to include the Michigan game. It's going to include potentially the Big Ten championship game, college football playoff, selection season. There's going to be an awful lot to talk about. Early signing days coming up. There's going to be a very busy and very exciting month at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So why don't you give it a shot? Less than 50 cents a day. Sign up today. If you like it, you'll be just in time to ask people for a annual subscription for Christmas, and then bing, bang, boom, you're done. You don't need to pay for any more. So give it a try for a month, and then, find a relative who wants to buy you something, and they will take care of that for the rest of the year. There you go. I'm solving all your problems here right now, right here on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast. You are very welcome. So we will see you on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com soon. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.